Here's what I know about agency owners. They want their young producers to be successful. I received an email this week from an agency owner who had seen me speak at the OIA annual convention, the Ohio Insurance Agents annual convention, and he sent me this email that I'm gonna read to you. We have a young producer that has been with us for about 4 years and is struggling writing personal lines and commercial lines business. The two of us work together, and I feel like I am trying to make him me, and he is not. What works for me in insurance selling does not work for him. Ryan, can you give me a detailed plan as to how we can get our young producer started in the digital marketing and help him succeed? There's a lot more to the email that provides context, but ultimately, that's the crux of it. Agency owner that wants his young producer to be successful, that knows the way he built the business. This young producer is not going to be able to build his own business the same way and is looking for a plan. That's what we're gonna talk about today, how you agency principals help your young producers be successful in the digital marketplace. Here we go. Now, before we get too far into this episode, I want to make sure that you guys realize this is not going to be one of those episodes where I just bang on agency principals for all the things that they don't do. That's 100% not the case. The vast majority of agency leadership does absolutely everything they can to help young producers be successful. Now, there are two scenarios in which that doesn't happen. The first is really the only one in which you can't really do anything about and is ultimately a toxic situation, and that's where there's an incredible ego involved. Now, agency owners, agency leadership, most of them built the agency that you as a young producer are now working for. They built them from scratch. They built them out of nothing. And a little bit of ego is warranted. But when that ego becomes a my way or highway scenario, an immovable object scenario where they are unrelenting, it's a we've always done business this way and therefore that's the way we're always gonna do business kind of thing, you're in big trouble, and there's not a lot that we can do about that. Scenario two, the scenario that you can actually do something about and that you can turn around and make an incredibly productive situation for yourself, is where agency leadership just isn't sure. They're not confident in what path to take. They don't know how to teach you the brackish water. They don't know how to teach you to be successful with 1 foot in the analog bucket and 1 foot in the digital bucket. And that is what we're gonna talk about today. Couple ground rules before we get started. First, agency owners, you're gonna have to give your young producers time, and you're gonna have to be patient with them because they're young producers. They don't know what the hell they're doing in the most part. And we all know it takes 2, 3, 4 years before you really get your legs underneath you. What we're gonna assume, a couple things. 1, you're willing to be open to new ideas. 2, you're willing to be patient. And three, and this one goes for young producers, you know about insurance, right? So agency owners, I'm gonna ask you to be open-minded and I'm gonna ask you to have patience. Young producers, I'm gonna ask you to work your ass off and you better know insurance. If you don't know insurance, you need to go back and start at the beginning because all the digital marketing in the world isn't gonna help you if you don't know what you're doing when the rubber meets the road and you actually have to do the thing that we do, which is provide good advice, coverage, expertise, advocacy, all those things that make us unique and special in the independent agency channel. So if you can't do those things, don't even think about getting started in digital marketing. The last thing I'll say before we get started on this topic is that agency principals and young producers, you guys are gonna have to work to the middle. The exact way that you want this thing to be, young producers is not the way it's going to be. And agency principals, that goes for you too. You don't get to dictate to them exactly the way this happens. If you want it to work, you're going to have to come to the middle. And young producers, there's going to be things that your agency principals are going to ask you to do because they know what they're doing. They've done it for a long time. They're not full of shit. Young producers are hungry, are willing to work, agency principals, okay? So let's get all the crap off the table. And young producers, you can't just do whatever you want. You have to listen to these guys. They know what they're doing. The men and women who have made it 20, 30, 40 years in this business, maybe they don't know digital marketing, but they sure as heck know the insurance business. So the answer, again, is the brackish water. It's that middle space. And what follows are a set of ground rules that are gonna help you win in this age of the brackish water. The first guideline, you're gonna have to track everything. And by everything, I mean you're gonna have to track your activity in the digital space. You're gonna have to track your traditional stuff like outbound calls, how many people you're touching, your reach, your traffic, your new leads, your close ratio, your phone calls, how many drop-ins you do, how many proposals you deliver, your close ratio, your premium. You have to track everything. You cannot make solid business decisions without quality business intelligence, and that only comes from tracking. Now, just the young producer tracking these things is not going to give your agency a good look at whether or not digital activities are successful or not. So my agency principals who are watching this, you need to encompass the ideas of tracking throughout your entire organization. Let's set the timetable. Agency principals, young producers, come together, review activity on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. And that might feel like a lot of meetings to you, but you want this to be successful, right? Communication is the key to this process being successful. Because if at any time the agency principal doesn't understand what you're doing, young producers, they're gonna shut it down. And agency principals, if your young producers feel like they don't have a line of communication to you, like you don't understand what they're trying to do and you don't respect what they're trying to do, they're going to shut down and they're not going to communicate with you, and then you're going to get frustrated because you don't know what's going on. Communicate often. More often is better. You know, you don't want to have too many meetings, but a quick 15, 20 minute pop in once a week is great. Quarterly, sit down and review exactly what's going on, what's working, what's not. You can even do that on a monthly basis if you feel that's necessary, but communicate, communicate, communicate. It's the only way this is going to work. The second guideline for young producers succeeding in the brackish water. Agency principals, give them a budget. Give them a budget. Give them something to work with. Now, I built the entire Murray Group digital presence on about $150 a month ongoing, but that didn't mean at different times I didn't need things like a camera or a new website. The Murray Group paid for me to go to a couple conferences and learn how to do this stuff better. So what I'm telling you is, you can't just throw your producer out into the wild and go, it's your job to do the marketing, you pay for it. That's nonsense. That's you not really setting them up for success. That's you saying to them, you know what, I know you don't own the agency, so you don't get all the cream like I get, but I'm gonna force you to work twice as hard with less resources and as a way to kind of prove my point that I don't want you to be successful. That's what you're saying. And I know because you're watching this video that that's not actually what you're saying. What you actually want is for your young producer to be successful, so give them some kind of budget to be successful. We're trying to set these young producers up for success. Number 3, be available to them. We talked a little bit about that in the communication stage, but be available to your young producers. Don't just check out. Answer their questions. They're gonna have a lot of questions about what's going on. And just because they're working in the digital space doesn't mean they're not gonna have the same questions that every producer has always had for as long as insurance has happened in an independent agency. They don't know what they're doing. They're babies. Even when you're in the business for 5 years, you still don't know what you're doing. You still have hundreds of questions. Be available to your young producers, answer their questions, help them be the experts that you are. And I promise that's gonna move them closer. They're gonna feel a connection to you. They're gonna feel like you really care about their success. And that emotional security is so incredibly important to young producer success. Now I'm talking specifically to the young producers watching this. This is number 4. Guys and gals, you're gonna have to sell. Just because this is digital marketing doesn't mean you get out of selling. That is the big, scary, hairy myth of digital marketing, is that all of a sudden you don't have to sell anymore. You still need to be a killer. You still have to go out and get yours. You gotta have that mental mindset of, I'm gonna go get mine, I'm gonna hunt it down, I'm gonna sell people. You have to have the killer mindset to succeed in digital, just like you did in traditional marketing. Just because you're not out cold calling anymore doesn't mean always be closing isn't a methodology. It just means you don't close in the same way. It means you close through content. It means you close a little softer. Maybe the runtime is a little bit longer, but you're always moving them towards a close. This isn't happy-go-lucky la-la land where you just get to write a nice blog post and people buy from you. That's not the way it works. You have to be selling in digital and bringing them through a process that ultimately gets them to call you, because if they don't call you, then you don't have a job. You're not producing. That's your job. And if you're not selling, that's a choice that has nothing to do with your agency principals. It's not their fault if you choose not to sell. So go out there and get it done. Be a killer. Boom. Number 5, stay hydrated. Number 5, and this is kind of a larger issue, is have respect for one another. And what do I mean by that? I mean, young producers, your agency principals have said, you know what, I don't necessarily understand what you need to do. I can't help you with the digital part, but I want you to be successful. So I'm gonna let you do digital and support you based on some of the things we've already talked about. That does not give you free reign to go headlong into digital and forget about the analog side. Again, it's about the brackish water. It's about coming to the middle. So be respectful of the risk that agency principal is taking in you. Agency principals understand that just because they're young producers and they like digital doesn't mean that they are digital experts yet. And they're gonna go through growing pains as they grow digital. So you have to come to the middle, and if they ask you to do things like be part of videos, be in their Instagram, buy certain tools, you gotta come to the middle too. And if you're gonna take that risk, invest in it all the way and come to the middle. You need that young producer who loves digital, just as much as they need you to learn about the business of insurance and how to sell. My purpose in doing this video and why I'm so happy that this agency principal asked this question is because, guys, there's so much opportunity for us out there, and we have to get away from this, you know, kind of traditional versus young agent thing where we're not paying them and we're not giving them resources and expecting them to be successful. It's just never gonna happen. And young producers, you gotta get out of the mindset that somehow they're old fogies and that they don't know what the hell is going on. These are the people who built this industry. Together, we can figure this stuff out, and we can take this independent agency to the next level. But if we do those things, we follow these set of guidelines, right? This is the foundational ideas that will set your agency up for success. I absolutely promise that. I'm out.